Good morning and welcome to the Underbrush podcast. I'm your host, Dakota Ward. I'm joined here this morning by a return guest, Todd Palmer, CEO of Extraordinary Advisors. We're here to talk about his new book. So excited to get into that. Todd, how are you doing this morning?
Oh, couldn't be happier to be here. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming back with a new face and a new host. So
yeah, there you go. It's just that's how the world of entertainment works.
That's right. One in, one out. Well, cool. For those of the viewers that either don't know you or just simply need a reminder, Todd, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, why you do it at Extraordinary Advisors, and then we can hop into your book.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. So I was the CEO of a staffing business for over 25 years. And during that genesis, I realized the only way to grow my business was to grow myself. My business was in chaos and crisis to the point of 10 years in, we were $600,000 in debt due to a lot of my choices. I was 2 months away from losing everything. My house was on the line. The bank had called the note. And I finally, for the first time in a decade, put aside my pride and ego, and I reached out and I asked for help, and I hired a coach. And that really transformed my business. Through a lot of hard work, changing of team members and changing of processes and changing of me, we got out of that debt within 8 years, and we hockey stick that business to the point where we made the Inc. 5000 6 times as one of the fastest growing companies in America.
Wow.
I retired from that business, and now I go around the country coaching and speaking to CEOs, entrepreneurs, and leaders around inside out leadership. And I've had some great successes. I had one client who made some tough decisions on his business. He changed out some leaders who were underperforming. And within a year, his revenue grew 70%, which was pretty exciting. But his profits grew 500%. And now he's on a rocket ship ride. He's barely hanging on some days. And it's really exciting as his coach to be part of that journey for this client.
Wow. What a background. How cool is that? Getting to travel around and stuff. Are you still traveling now?
Yeah, I am still traveling now. This week I was supposed to be in Texas, and unfortunately, for no COVID reasons, I was rescheduled for 30 days from now. And it's so fun to sit in a room with CEOs, and I do a deep dive process to get them unstuck. And people will come on stage and they'll say, well, I'm stuck around selling my company. Let's talk about that. So we'll talk there for like an hour in front of the audience. And you'd be surprised at some of the shares I get from people who I've just met, where this one CEO was, again, having a struggle selling her business. And it came down to, I thought, okay, was it price? Well, yeah, it was price because she never gave a price. So, well, tell me why you haven't given a price. She gets really quiet. And she says in front of all her peers, I have some real self-esteem issues, and whatever they offer me, I think they're going to offer me too much. And because I don't think highly of myself, I can't ask for fair market value for my business. And she just broke down. 15 minutes later, I got her smiling. We got her pivoted around what was really most important to her. And last time I talked to her, she was in negotiations to sell that business for a great multiplier because she realized that she was the bottleneck in the process. The business had great value, had great interest in the marketplace. And it's so fun for me to go back and think about how stuck I was back in 2006. And now to work with entrepreneurs who are now stuck and getting them unstuck, like I talk about in my book, is the most rewarding work I've ever done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how gratifying to see somebody in that state and to help them carry them along and say, no, you do have the confidence to do this. You have a wonderful business and it's worth selling. And so that's so refreshing to hear that she's at least in the middle of those talks. I don't know if she's followed through and gotten that done, but best of luck to her in those endeavors.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, it is the most rewarding work I've ever done because when someone has some self-awareness and they have that light bulb moment and they decide that they want to do something different and something that's been holding them back, they decide to work. A lot of us, if it's hard work, we're going to pull back. If it's uncomfortable work, we're going to steer clear from it. If we can get them to push through that growth, it's like going to the gym. If you work your muscles, they're going to grow. There's going to be pain and discomfort, but at the end, it will be satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an old Winston Churchill quote. I think I've said it on the podcast before, but it's to improve is to change, to perfect is to change often.
Yes, and love that. I've not heard that.
Yeah, so I mean, the same with working out, right? Your body will get used to the same routine if you do the same thing over and over again. You got to keep it changing to keep improving.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. So, well, cool. Todd, you're an author as well. So I'd love to get into the new book, From Suck to Success. Where's the inspiration from that? How long have you been working on this?
Oh, wow. So, well, it's been quite a journey. It started out as one version of the book, and we went through, I think, seven rewrites in 5 years to get the book down to something that I'm really proud of. And we launched it a couple weeks ago. It's now an Amazon International selling book in 4 different categories. And
Wow.
I never thought I'd be number one in any category, but getting into 4 categories really was very humbling. And the feedback I've gotten on the book and the transformations it's already making in the marketplace with startup entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and leaders who maybe are struggling to grow, and entrepreneurs who are just wrapped up in the chaos and the crisis that they've been dealing with COVID, has been so incredibly rewarding. When someone recently wrote to me and said that, your book, I've had it for 2 weeks and I carry it wherever I go. You get the PDF version, so I know he's got like 236 pages he's carrying around.
Yeah.
And he goes like, this has become my Bible, and I've reread it now 3 times. I mean, that is just so incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 times in 2 weeks. It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, if you read it cover to cover, it's about a 4-hour read. But I was like, the fact, and he called me up into the call, and he's got these. It's all dog-eared, and it's all highlighted. He's got sticky notes all over the thing. I said, listen, Mike, let me just send you a copy of the paperback. It's coming out next week. I got some advanced copies. Yeah, as my gratitude for your support.
That is so awesome. So he printed it out.
He did. Yeah. Well, he's been a friend of mine for a couple of years. He's a solopreneur, and I know he was struggling with his business, and I offered it to him to read. And, it's kind of like I put it out in the wind. If someone wants to read it, great. I know that a lot of people will say, oh yeah, please send me your book and I'll pick it up. But if you actually read it, I mean, the first 4 chapters are getting your mindset unstuck. And then the next 4 chapters are putting in practical applications within your business to grow like we grew Diversified. And, it's like you talked about, with the Churchill quote, if you're constantly improving, you're constantly perfecting, you're constantly growing.
Right. And it's just one step at a time, right? Everybody gets lost in the larger goal, but you forget there's many goals that it takes to get you to that bigger one.
Oh, for sure. And I tell my clients, I said, if we work together for 52 weeks a year, well, let's be honest, we're going to work together for 50 weeks a year, and we're going to take 2 weeks off. But if you improve 1% a week for 50 weeks, you've improved 50%. And it's astronomical. It's just those little tiny pivots. And if you really look at the science behind how we learn, 80 to 85% of our learning occurs in our subconscious. So a lot of it's done in a very passive way, but a lot of us as entrepreneurs, especially type A hard drivers like I was, want to muscle through that. They want to push harder. Well, going back to the exercise routine, if you work out every day, yeah, you're going to grow, but you got to also allow for some rest and recovery. And as entrepreneurs, I ask my entrepreneurs where do you get your best ideas? And typically it's at the gym or in the shower or some non-active, non-focused place. And if we can let that creativity of the higher cerebral cortex come into play, a lot of growth can occur as long as you're feeding it the right information.
Sure. So, well, you've touched on it now a couple of times, but you talk about the mindset of entrepreneurs. And I know when we were talking on the phone yesterday, how important that is to fully understand that, and maybe the psychology a little bit behind that. Can you speak to that?
Sure. And I always want to give credit where credit is due. So I coach. I've coached full-time for 4 years, informally for about 15. But during that 15-year journey, I've had 2 coaches in my life. And my current coach is a guy named Dr. Daniel Friedland out of San Diego, California. And he's written a wonderful book called Living Well from Within. Actually, this is his YouTube channel, Living Well from Within. And he talks a lot about the mindset, and he's very qualified to do so because he's literally a brain surgeon. And so when I'm talking to someone who's feeding me with all this great information about how the mindset changes, we talk about using the active learning cycle, which I highlight throughout the course of my book. Actually, every chapter in my book ends with an active learning cycle exercise. And in that active learning cycle, it's really reframing the brain, because I found that when my business was $600,000 in debt, it was a people problem. Well, the person was me. It's always a people problem. And in order to change your business, you change yourself. And in order to change it, you have to change the way you think. And, I can, from a pop culture standpoint, we have stinking thinking. I get that. But how do you change that? there is actually a way to do that. And once we do that inside out leadership, we realize that in order to change our external world, we have to change our internal world using the active learning cycle. And I know we talked to you yesterday about intention, not expectation. Expectation is a win-lose. Intention is and both. When we're learning and we're growing, and when use me as the example, I'm $600,000 in debt. Not a good place to be, not feeling super comfortable. But if I only went into solving that problem with my coach to look at it like, well, I can solve it with this program A or program B. Well, it gives me two options. Those are kind of win-lose. But if I go into it with more of a holistic mindset of intentional, using the Stockdale paradox, my brutal reality is I'm in debt. My intention is to make this the defining moment of my career, and somehow I'm going to get through the other side, and I'm going to be able to be a better leader that way. Then as I'm working with my staff, and they're more creative, they're not worried about winning or losing. They're not worrying about failing or succeeding, but they're more concerned with learning, seeing what the marketplace wants to deliver. How can we get that back into? That keeps us in a much higher frame of creativity versus being in a reactive mindset, being fight or flight because we're focused on winning or losing.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, that makes sense too, because a lot of times, especially today, everything is just so reactionary. We're just taking it as it comes instead of having that mindset and that plan, looking forward and looking ahead.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I recently saw a speaker, recently, like 2 years ago, when we saw a speaker.
Yeah.
And he talked about that from a really unique perspective. He's a millennial thought leader. His space was social media. And he came and talked to a bunch of us older guys, and he was telling us how that mindset is being permeated and pushed down to our young people through social media. And he was telling us the story about a young lady he was dating at the time, and how they couldn't leave the house until she posted a picture on Instagram, got a certain number of likes, external validation, and then she was ready to go on with her evening. So that to me seemed very dangerous, that we're so reliant on that external versus that internal valuation.
Right. Yeah, we call that in marketing vanity metrics.
There you go.
That's exactly. It's when you're sitting there and you're waiting for all these numbers, and it looks great on a piece of paper, but what does it really do? Where's the engagement?
Yeah, and then what? Furthermore, if you're a parent of a young lady and all she's doing is focusing on those vanity metrics, the external validation about her appearance or about how she's dressed or what have you, how does that impact her as a human being? And is that healthy? And this young guy, his name was Connor, was really challenging that. Like, we've got to take a look at, how do we value others? How do we value self going forward? Because one day he's like 19 or 20. He goes, someday I'm going to be somebody's dad. And we're all kind of chuckled. He's like, yeah, you think you're laughing? It scares the hell out of me, because I'm going to be married to her and we're going to be so externally focused. How are we going to be able to raise productive members of society in our household?
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting part about everything that's going on right now. And you talk about it, especially with social media, and you touched on it before, is the subconscious. What is the subconscious doing that we're not really paying attention to with all of this instant gratification that's coming around? And so how do you combat that? How do you make sure that it's not getting deeply ingrained into your subconscious to where you need that reactionary, quick feedback?
Well, it's so interesting you said that, because I talk about it in my book, where to the feedback piece, like my doom loop, my itty bitty shitty committee was very externally focused. So if the business was doing great, I was great. If the business was sucking, I sucked. And it was just this elevator ride of misery for me, because I was so focused that if the business was me and I was the business, and the business defined my value, my worth on the planet. That was incredibly dangerous. So much of what goes on in our external worlds start in our internal headspace, the way we show up. I mentioned a few minutes ago that I have a coach, Dr. Friedland. He's taught me a really valuable lesson lately, and he's sharing this on his YouTube channel, where you talk about the external world. Well, things can happen to us, or they can happen for us. And if we approach something that happens for us, then we handle it in a much healthier way, and we're not victims and we're not martyrs. And he tells a powerful story of last November. He was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer, which gives him a runway of about 15 to 24 months. Then his time will be up. And he's decided that will be the defining moment of his life. And he's going to share every day, and he does every day, a video update of how he's doing. And he's folded in his family. His wife will contribute. His 2 sons will contribute. And his goal is to teach us that no matter how bad it is, you can find the positive in it. No matter how bad it is, you can make it happen for you, not to you. And I just compliment him so greatly. We all worry about how do we live a great life. I know I do. But how do we potentially know? Because even if Steve Jobs can't cheat death, I can't cheat death. So if all the money in the world isn't going to get buy us extra time, then how do we live our best life now? And then if we know our time is coming up, how do we exit in a healthy, productive, and loving way versus a fear-based way?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't take it with you when you go. All that money is great now, but you can't take it with you.
For sure.
So you touched on it a little bit. Was at the beginning was inside out leadership. That's a phrase that I know that but for those of us that aren't totally sure what that actually means, can you give a little bit of an explanation of what that means?
Yeah, and it's really the differentiator in how I coach too. A lot of people will hire a coach to teach them a process, which is great. There's EOS, there's scaling up, both great business processes for depending upon the size of your business. So if I teach you a process, Dakota, and you don't follow it, you've paid me for it and you're not following it, I get very curious around that, because there's something going on for you that's not getting you to follow a process. If you sign up for a gym and you never go, or you sign up for a nutrition coach, yet you still eat burger and pizza, what there's a reason why. Well, there's something going on internally, and that's where I come in with inside out leadership. Because in order to change your business, in order to change your health, in order to change your personal relationships, your family dynamics, how you show up as a leader, it all comes from the inside out. So the inside out leadership that I work with puts people into the active learning cycle. We identify what's not working for you. So if you say, listen, being $600,000 in debt isn't working for you, that makes sense. I want to validate that. And then what is the strategy, or what is the intention we want to create around that shift in mindset? Then once we have an intention, we put in a strategy beneath that to go against your intention. And then there's a lot of iterative learning that sits beneath the strategy, and it just cycles through daily. And as you go through the leader starts to change internally. The crazy thing about it is, and I tell this to everyone that I work with, the more you change internally, the more you're going to show up differently in the world, and you're not even going to be aware of it. And people are going to say, oh my gosh, Dakota, your energy is just so different than it was 6 months ago. What are you doing? Or, your leaders are going to say, wow, I used to be able to pull the wool over your eyes. Now you're really on top of your game. I might want to start looking, because you're going to find out that I'm an underperformer. Or your kids are going to say, my gosh, Dad, you're so much more enjoyable to be around. What are you doing differently? Because, when you're stressed out and you're angry and you're taking it out on us, as a lot of entrepreneurs will do. We love solving problems as entrepreneurs. We don't realize that we're also the chief arsonist who start the fires that we get to put out and be the hero of.
Yeah.
All those things take place as you change your inside out. So that's really, I think, something that, as we go through the chaos and crisis of COVID, and as we get through into what the next generation of leadership is going to look like, you're going to see a lot of talk, I think, around inside out leadership.
And is it more of a mindset thing? Is it changing habits? Is it a conglomerate of the both?
I would say it's
give us a little insight.
Yeah, it's more of a conglomerate of the both. It's an awareness. It's okay. I realized that showing up isn't working for me this way. How do I want to show up differently? And then to be very mindful of it and start to show up. Google has done a lot of studies around it. They have a version of it they call psychological safety, where as a leader, if I want something different from my team, how do I show up differently? How do I interact with them differently? It's compared to just pushing down top-down leadership. How do I collaborate? And millennials love the model. Millennials want to be part of teams. Millennials want to be seen and heard, and millennials want to contribute in a way that's different. I'm Gen X, different than how we were taught. And as you go through, and as we get more millennials into leadership positions, you're going to see them get in there. Now, here's where millennials typically struggle with the inside-out leadership model, and a lot of leaders do regardless, is it's that massive curiosity on why something isn't working versus pushing it down a lot of judgment, because we will do that. And then once we get massively curious and we learn more, then how do we hold people massively accountable? Because that accountability piece that people really resist against. They think that they're being controlled versus being accountable. And it's that accountability piece that I do as a coach with all of my clients. Whatever your goal is great. It's your goal. But when you act in direct contrast to that, we delve into your inside out leadership because there's something that's misaligned. Because your goal, all I'm holding you accountable is, why didn't you take the steps necessary to achieve what you said you wanted?
Right. I've had a previous boss that gave me some of the best advice that I've had thus far in my life is, because he was so intelligent and just so smart. He was almost like a walking encyclopedia. And so, I asked him, I said, how do you know so much? Where did you get this? One, he has a photographic memory, so he's got a leg up on the rest of us.
Sure,
but two,
sure.
he said, he's like, you just have to be curious.
Yeah.
You have to be curious about everything.
Yeah.
And not just curious in the standpoint of, well, what does that mean? But what does that mean? And why am I curious about it? And why is everybody else curious about it?
Yeah. One of the tips I tell people is to ask why 3 times, 3 different ways. Why is that important to you? And then I always tell my leaders, because they're like, well, but what if I get to the third why and I still don't have an answer and something feels off? Like, slow down and breathe.
Right.
And say, you know what? I'm not sure I 100% understand where you're coming from. Can you tell me more? What people really want, whether it's the people who live in our household or the people who work in our companies, they want to be seen and they want to be heard. And when they're seen and heard, they get out of their reactive mindset into their creative mindset. A circle of trust is created. And when we trust, think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The very base, the biggest part is safety and belonging. If I feel trust, I feel safe. When I feel safe, I feel like I belong. And then things can happen. The reality is, most problems in business, actually most problems in life are all people problems. And part of it is to understand that I'm going to put up a forward face to you because I want to feel safe. And when I put that forward face up to you as you're my boss, well, I don't want to get fired because you ultimately have that control. Once I put that mask down, and once we get to the root issue, not the symptom, but the root of the issue, it's never, like going back to the example of the woman who, I don't have a price for my business. It's not a business issue. It's a self issue that you don't feel like you're good enough to ask for that price. Let's figure out why you don't feel good enough. Let's dig there. Like, I get excited about that. I'm going to go do a program in Baton Rouge in a couple of weeks. And he goes, well, we need you for about 8 hours. Do you want to do that over 2 days, 4 hours? So I said, no, we can do it all in one day. He's like, aren't you going to be exhausted? I said, I will promise you this. I will be more fired up after those 8 hours. Now, you guys will be exhausted, but I'll be fired up because I love that when people have that awareness and they're able to grow through those tough moments.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to your level of expertise and your level of passion and seeing people go from point A and knowing they want to get to point B, and you being that medium that helps get them there.
Well, it's in that joy of being massively curious.
Sure.
And like, I just worked with a group in Texas, and they brought me in, and they want to know exactly how it was all going to go. And because I wanted to keep my customer happy, I tried to explain it to him. And we were on the phone for like 90 minutes. And I said, listen, I'm going to show up. I'm going to meet the room where it's at at that hour of that day. We're going to lay out what we're going to accomplish. And I promise you, we will get it accomplished. If you're unsatisfied, don't pay me, because I can't. It's that magic of being in the room. It's that magic of that massive curiosity. It's that magic of digging deep in allowing someone to express that you can't script it. And that's sometimes the hardest part about what I do is, like, I try to explain it to people. But my best sales tool, someone asked me the other day, like, well, how many more clients do you want to have? And I said, I have a number, but I'm at about 75% there. I said, but when I get to 100%, I'm going to want more, because I love those moments of watching people grow and develop. But my best sales tool is actually being in a room and unpacking someone's 10 years worth of pain and having them have a breakthrough and having them, oh my gosh, I've been struggling with this issue for the last decade of my life. And in less than 2 hours, I'm unstuck around it. Now, it doesn't solve the problem, but now I have an awareness of where it comes from versus, changing process. It's like, I used this analogy the other day. I said, you're a golfer and you keep getting new drivers. What's the constant in that? Well, I'm brand loyal to Nike, or I'm brand loyal to Big Bertha. No, you're the constant. What if we, instead of changing your process, changing your external, changing your driver, what if we work on you, but not on your swing, but how you approach the shot, because you only have one drive. So you're going to have 18 drives. That's it. That's all you're going to have. So let's just figure out how to do that. And he's like, oh, well, I never thought of it like that. I said, yeah, it's much easier to spend a couple $100 on a new driver than actually do the work.
Right. You don't have to drive it 300 yards every time.
No. And, as you get older, your flexibility reduces. And you're like, well, maybe,
Yeah.
like, so it's funny. My brother was a Division I golfer, and I talk about him in the book.
Wow.
He was my first coach, and he's always very clear. He's like, you know what? You got this shot. You can't worry about the shot you just took, and you can't worry about the shot you were going to take. You have this shot. And if you just do this shot to the best of your ability over and over and over again, and what is Greg? Greg's going to be 65 this year. He still wins club championships against guys half his age because he just plays the shot. He doesn't worry about the next shot. And, he can be a trash talker, I'm sure. But if you're going to let him rent space in your head, that's on you, not on him. And he's able to perform a sport at a very high level. And so we're working on the book. And I said, just out of curiosity, because he's 12 years older than me. I said, where did you learn how to golf? I mean, by the time I came into your life, you were already playing, junior tournaments and everything. It's like, yeah, I read a book. I think it was the Ben Hogan book on golf. I said, you've never taken a lesson? He's like, no. I read the book, the book seemed pretty simple. Play the shot you got. And you just repeat that over and over and over and over again. 10,000 hours of practice equals mastery. And I was just blown away. And he's like, yeah, most people now want the quick fix, or they want this gadget or this device. It's like, there's no quick fix.
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting. I mean, there's no quick fix to success. It takes time. It takes effort. And in the world that we live in with instant gratification, we think we can have it at the snap of your fingers. And really, what you're missing is that internal piece that all of these successful people have that starts from within. And so you have to start within, and then it takes time, and like it grows from there.
Well, it's crazy. I got a new client engagement. The CEO's in front of all of his leaders. Like, this is Todd. He's going to be our coach. We're working with him for the next year. And he's going to eliminate all the problems in the organization. And I said, I stopped him right in the middle. Like, this is I'm there like for 7 minutes. I said, oh, it doesn't work that way. No. I said, I never promised you I would eliminate all the problems in your organization. What I said was, so say you have a problem of cash. You don't have enough cash. That's a money problem. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to be super successful as the CEO, as the entrepreneur, as the person who's everything flows to your tax return. You're going to have a new problem. You're going to have a tax problem. You're going to have to pay a lot of taxes. You're going to have a money problem, but it's a better money problem. I said, we're going to upgrade your money problems. We're going to upgrade your people problem. You're still going to have problems. That's how this works. It never goes away, because the constant in any business, and the constant in any family, and the constant in any social environment are the people. And people, by their very nature, are flawed. And those flaws are going to come out, and they're going to create problems.
Right. The solution to the problem is understanding how to work the problem, not getting rid of the problem.
Right. And how do you figure out, is it a surface issue? You have a marketing problem. Okay. This is my client who grew 500%. He had a marketing problem. Mm-hmm. We kept digging into the problem. We kept creating what looked on paper to be great plans. And we give them to the vice president of marketing. And like the gigantic black hole that he was, the plan would go in and nothing would happen. Hmm. And the CEO, we did it, every quarter we have our team meeting, and things wouldn't get moving. Finally pulled the CEO aside. I said, I think your plan is solid, but we don't know yet because no one's executing it. Why not? Well, there's all these reasons. I said, okay, so we don't have a marketing problem. Marketing is a symptom result. What you have is a people problem. You have two people who have the problem. You as the leader aren't holding him accountable, and he as the employee is not executing. So there's two ways to execute. You either do the work or you get executed. Pick one. And see, he was like, oh my, trust me on this. Said, do you know what he should do? Yes. Do you know the top 5 things he should do? Yes. Could he start tomorrow? Oh, absolutely. Great. We're going to go back into the room, and you're going to tell him that he's going to start these things tomorrow. And then tomorrow afternoon, you're going to follow up, and you're going to have a report from him. And for the next 30 days, you're going to get that report at the end of each day. And you're going to talk to him for 10 minutes at the end of each day. Because you're going to go from no accountability to massive accountability. This was on a Tuesday. He was fired by Friday. Company grew 500% in profits, 70% revenue, because the bottleneck wasn't the marketing plan, but the marketing person.
Wow. It's very interesting. And I like your analogy is either do the work or get executed. That's how you
Yeah,
execute.
and I told the CEO, I said, you know what? For whatever reason, he's got a bottleneck in not wanting to do the job. He's got a passive aggressive way he's handling things. And you can pay me and I can dig deeper, or you can get somebody who's just going to do the work. The choice is yours. It's all about choice.
Sure.
And the CEO said, listen, we've been messing with this for 6 months and we got to grow this business. So let's bring in somebody else. So he brought in a junior person. CEO got much more involved, and their track record now really does speak for themselves.
Right. There's a little bit of Stoic advice that falls into this. I've started following it the last couple of years, and we talked about it before, but it's the idea of change and things inside and outside of your control. Mm-hmm. And so the Stoic philosophy is understanding what's within your control and what's without, and letting go of all of the expectations of the things that are outside of your control, and really focusing on what you can control. So what can we control as people? We can control ourselves. We can control our intentions. We can control our actions. I can't control the weather. I can't control the political climate. I can't control, any of these things. So why let it bother me? But what I can control is how hard I work. If I'm not working hard enough, my boss, who has control of my job, can then execute me, right? Get that execution done. So understanding what you can and can't control is very integral in happiness in life, but also success.
Well, and take it even if it's kind of the rings of a tree. If you go out another ring, you control who's in your life. I mean, you do.
Sure.
I mean, you control who's on your team. You control who you're in a relationship with, whatever, friends or significant others. You have that control. It's when people struggle with understanding that. I'm working with a different leader right now, and they're letting somebody go who's an underperformer, and they've been kicking this can down the road now for several months. Finally, it comes out that, going back to inside out, nice people don't fire people. Okay, so all right, that's how you see the world. That's fine. Tell me where that comes from. Went back to childhood, went back to some issues. I said, okay, so we've realized that in your definition, nice people don't fire people. So what do nice people do with people who are stealing from you? She looked at me. I said, well, you're paying me as an employee to do the work. I'm not doing the work by my choice as the employee. One way to define it would be stealing. Massive shift. She's like, all right, she's got to go. Because she's only seen the problem, like forest for the trees. Like, the only way to see it is this way. I said, part of the job of a coach is to ask generative questions. And if I'm at a 30,000 foot view and she's in the woods running into the same tree that nice people don't fire people, nice people don't fire people, if I can get her to take 5 steps back and realize that the tree she's running into isn't a nice person tree, but if someone's stealing from me tree, it changes things. And it's that, being a coach is one of the most trusting relationships I've ever had with anybody. Because I hear stories about struggles and about relationships and about challenges. And sometimes it's self-loathing and self-hatred. I mean, I've got 2 clients that during COVID, because of how they were showing up and how they were behaving, have checked into rehab because they needed to show up differently. They needed to make changes in their lives. And we created that platform for them to create some self-compassion, some self-forgiveness to do that. No different than this leader who's got to fire somebody. Most entrepreneurs are really good people. I honestly look at, if most people are really good people, it's just if we can shift their perspective on how they see themselves and shift their perspective on how they see the people in their lives, that's really where the breakthroughs can happen. And they're able to, again, like you said, like the Stoics talk about, assume that control of what they can control.
Right. There's and we're getting pressed for time, but I did want to share a couple things before I've got some more questions for you. But there's a post that I saw somewhere, or maybe it was something that somebody said to me, but it was, and this just falls in line with my own personal faith, but it was, somebody said, it was like, God worked so hard on you. He said, I worked so hard on you. And you look in the mirror and say that's not enough. Right. And so how do we get that self-image to be confident in ourselves and to know that we are who we are for a reason, and we're unique for a reason?
Yeah, it's tough. So I'm certainly not going to portray that it's easy. For me, I find it comes down to self-compassion, self-acceptance, And with anybody that I work with, the journey. So I've been with my coach for 7 years, and we just did a show together, and it was interesting because someone in the chat box said, "Hey, how can you have a coaching relationship for 7 years?" And to your point of that self acceptance and that self enjoyment, it's life is the curriculum. It's not just entrepreneurship. It's not just business. And if we can help, whether it's a person, it doesn't matter the age. If they can look in the mirror and feel a little bit better about themselves, a little bit more every day, then the work is powerful. Because what they're going to do is they're going to create a ripple effect in their world, a ripple effect in their universe, and they're going to help other people feel better. And if we're able to create those messages through shows like yours today and other platforms, we're making a difference. And that's really all we can do.
Yeah. The power of positive thinking, and it's contagious, right? You get around a couple of guys, a couple of girls that are very enthusiastic. They're very high energy. What happens to you? You end up being the same way.
Yeah. And it's positive. I even talk about this. I use a lot of work from Gabriel Odejan, and positive thinking is great, but then you have to take action around it.
Sure. Yeah.
So here's what a positive thinker without action looks like. I'm going to be rich by playing the lottery, and I'm going to play the lottery with my government assisted money, but I'm not going to have a job. No, certainly if you want if one of your investment vehicles is lottery, good for you. But how about you also do a job, and maybe you also have a side hustle, and maybe start a small business. You have a lot of different income stream opportunities. If the lottery hits, good for you. But hope is not a strategy. Optimism with strategic intention behind it and massive action around it, that's a much better plan.
That's right. Yeah. Don't hang your hope in the clouds and hope that you catch a dream.
Exactly.
Love that. Well, cool. So you talked about the Amazon International Bestsellers list. I'd love to know maybe some insights as to how you got into that and what are the 4 categories? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, yeah. So I got to look at my little note here because I always screw it up here. So the 4 categories are: number 1 in small business sales, number 1 in sales management, number 1 in business marketing and management, and number 1 in starting a business.
Wow.
And it was all through Amazon pre-sale initiatives. We did a program where we offered the book on Kindle for 99 cents and encouraged people in my network to buy it. And that was probably the most humbling day of my life. That's like so many people would support and help out, because it's not like I can game the system and buy 300 copies off of my Amazon account. Amazon's figured all that out. And I think we did in 8 hours, we did about 220 books in 8 hours. Wow. And to 210 different Amazon accounts and 210 different people. Like, oh my gosh, I can't, people I hadn't talked to since high school. And like, oh my God, I was just blown away. And what we did was we really laid out a pre-sale bestseller campaign. We did email blasts laying out over three sequent period, social media posts. But then that's what I paid another business to help me with, because I really didn't know what I didn't know. But I also realized that I'm a little bit more of I want to control my own destiny kind of guy. So I took their content and I reformatted and I repackaged it. And then I started individually reaching out to, I made a list of 400 people that were my 400 most important people in my life. It's nice to have 400.
Yeah.
And I just started pinging them. And I said, hey, can you help a brother out, kind of thing? And I really appreciate it. And I even said to one guy, he goes, dude, quit bothering me. I said, it's $1. If you don't like the book, I'll give you the $1 back. In fact, I'll double your investment. I'll give you $2 back. Give me your PayPal. We can stop talking about this. And he calls me up. He's like, okay, all right, I got it. It's important to you. And you're important to me. It's important to you. I'm happy to do it. And that's really how we did it. So we did, e-blasts, social media. I got heavily involved. I blocked out 36 hours over 2 days of my life to push this initiative through, because it was important to me from a perspective of I want the book to do well, not because I want the book to do well to make me a lot of money. I don't see the book as a moneymaker at all. Mm-hmm. What I do see the book as a vehicle to introduce me to new people. And 12 years ago, I was blessed and I worked with a guy named Simon Sinek. And I worked with him for 2 years to figure out 2 words. And my 2 words are improve lives. If I can improve lives, then my time here on earth was worthwhile. And how do I improve lives? Well, the more people I speak with, the more people I'm able to be massively curious with, the more people I can help do inside out leadership with, the more lives I can improve. And the book allows me to do that. So really, my thought process was, I want to be a servant leader to the global entrepreneurship community, and the best way to do that is to get the book in as many hands as possible. So I'm going to put the work in. Again, hope isn't a strategy. I can certainly trust the vendor, but I need to be a little bit more engaged in this process.
Love that. Yeah, one tactic gets you in the game, 2 makes you dangerous, and 3 or more gives you really the best chance for success.
Well, so. I agree with that.
Well, that's awesome. So again, Todd, we're getting a little pressed for time, but how can people find your book? How can people get in contact with you for the coaching aspect of what you do? What's the best way to contact you and get this book and purchase it? So
I would encourage anybody who's interested in the book to go to my website. I have 2 websites running for it right now. I've got FromSuckToSuccess.com. Go there, get a free chapter of the book. My gift to you for listening today. Or go to ExtraordinaryAdvisors.com. You can also get a free chapter of the book there, as well as if anybody's interested and they want to have a free coaching call, I'm happy to give 30 minutes of my time to anybody that wants to have a conversation about how they're stuck. I did this program when COVID first hit. I talked to 42 CEOs in 67 days to help them get unstuck around their fears around chaos and crisis, that COVID was really happening to them, not for them. And I'm happy to make that offer to anybody who's on the call today. Just email me. Let's get you on the call, or get you on my calendar and have a call.
I love it. Well, cool. Todd from Extraordinary Advisors, CEO, also an author, and just a thought leader in general. Really awesome. So great to have you here this morning on the Underbrush podcast. It's been my pleasure to reintroduce you to Liger and all of our viewers. So thanks again for joining us this morning.
Dakota, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, take care and have a great rest of the week.
You too.